Something that is very different, something that is new to me as a uni student, especially when in Europe, is that the breaks here from the academic year are much longer and more frequent than what I've been used to. When I was a high school student in the States, they were much shorter and not as often, whereas now they're longer and more frequent. And naturally, as someone who's not necessarily used to that, I have had to figure out what I do during those breaks. And I'm a musician, so I practice, but recently I've had two different breaks, one at the beginning of the year and one just recently, and they have been very different. I treated them very differently and I had very different outcomes. One was not as good as the other, one was definitely better than the other. And so today I want to share with you these two breaks, how I dealt with them, what I did during them, and how they ended up helping me or hurting me through this. So let's dive into it. The first break was at the beginning of the year, and before this break I was in an opera, I was in a few other ensembles, I was preparing for an oboe technical exam, and at the time I was working through some personal stuff as well. So there was a lot in the situation. I was very busy, I was very overwhelmed, mentally I wasn't the best, and so just to like set the scene for this break, that's kind of the background. And so when I went into this break, I was absolutely exhausted, but I looked at this break and I took it as an opportunity to work on things like the podcast and things like social media and getting some extra practice hours in, and just basically I'm like, okay, good, a chance, because I've been focusing so much on, uni work, and because I was in the opera, which was a part of a project at my conservatoire, and all of these things, I was like, okay, finally some time that I can work on the podcast, I can work on confident musicianing, all of like the stuff that's not to do with university. I can focus on that now, and I can practice a ton. And I remember that Saturday at the beginning of this break, I had 2 weeks, and I spent 2 hours that Saturday afternoon just planning my week, or my 2 weeks, literally every single minute, including the fun stuff. What am I gonna do? Where am I gonna go? What am I gonna do? But those were very few and far between in terms of fun, exciting things. It was mostly, okay, I'm gonna get this done, this done, this done. I'm gonna get these emails out, and they'll probably have replied by 2 days later. So then after that, I'm gonna get this, this, and this done. And it was just so busy. And at the end of it, like, okay, so the first week went okay. I was okay, I got the stuff done, and honestly, I felt quite good about it. I was like, I've planned this week, and I've done it, I've gotten into it, oh my gosh, this is great. But then, by the time the second week started, I was behind on my plan. And so not only was I behind on my plan, but I was also feeling really stressed out about it, because I was behind on my plan. I was like, oh my gosh, I only have 2 weeks to get all of this stuff done. What am I gonna do? So then I worked more, and you can tell this was a catastrophe. It wasn't good. I didn't give myself rest. I just worked and worked and worked, and at the end of it, by the time I got back to school, I was even more exhausted than when I got into it. I wasn't ready to focus. I wasn't ready to work. I felt exhausted, and I ended up failing that oboe technical exam. My idea of, okay, I'm gonna, be productive, I'm gonna do the best I can, I'm gonna be, super Eleanor in these 2 weeks, ended up making it so that I ended up failing an exam because I had overworked myself too much, and by the time I got to the exam, I had nothing left. Nothing. I was like, ugh. So that didn't go well. That was the first break. And so by the time the second break came around, I was determined not to do the same thing, because on paper, it had looked like I had done so much. I had, just all of the things I had done, but mentally, emotionally, just in me, not good. It wasn't good. And also I had failed that exam. So the next break, I was like, okay, let's do it differently. So break two was 3 weeks long, and actually today is the last day of this break at the time of recording. So it's fresh in my mind. And I did a few different things. Number one, I did not take a Saturday afternoon and plan the entire break out. I didn't even take a Friday afternoon and plan the entire break out. I didn't plan the entire break out. I had some ideas of what I kind of wanted to do. I have some schoolwork that I need to get done, or that I have been getting done, and things like that. Obviously, I wanted to practice. I had goals, but I didn't do things like, okay, it's Saturday right now, next Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. I know exactly what I'm going to be working on. I wasn't going to do that because that was a bit much. We had learned from before that was too much. And so what I did was I just put my goals, and then I was like, okay, and now we're just going to kind of go with the flow, sort of. We're going to have our goals and our plans, and we have our everyday things. And I know that, I'm going to end up doing this thing on this day, but it took the stress out of it, I feel, of like, okay, today is whatever, and I know that I need to get this, this, and this, and this done, and we have to do it today because tomorrow we have 20 more things that we need to do. It was more chill, and honestly, that took the stress out of it. It took the stress out of it, and it made me be more in the moment. I spent more time grabbing coffee with friends or chatting with friends. I ran into people on the street as well. I noticed things. I didn't notice things the break before. And I just was more in the moment and more calm. And that was so much better. And also, when we're thinking of productivity, right? Because I feel like my brain, and maybe your brain too, would say, okay, well, that's great, but were you not as productive? I feel like, honestly, I was more productive during this break than the one that I planned meticulously. Because yes, I spent more time grabbing coffee with friends, but during those conversations with grabbing coffee with friends, I was able to learn things from them. I have really interesting friends. No, but at the conservatoire, there are people who are doing projects. Maybe they need an oboist. I got, opportunities that maybe I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been just calmer generally. So there were things like that, and I think those conversations are valuable. And so that's kind of how that worked, and I think that was much better than just me in my flat on my computer sending emails to strangers to get opportunities. That's great, but also having conversations with people, slowing down, honestly, I feel got me further. And so that was good. I still practiced, but because I feel I had more space in my life, I felt I had practiced better, and I was also calmer with myself. I struggle with pain in my practice. I have some chronic illnesses that make it so that if I play oboe too long, I really struggle with pain. And so because I was generally calmer and not kind of pushing things as much, time-wise, I was able to take the breaks I needed in my sessions and still get good gains in my sessions without hurting myself. And I think that is really, really important and helpful in this situation and in the breaks. So I think the second break was better. I got so many more cool opportunities. So many more cool opportunities came, and I was ready to work on them and to receive them because I had time to. I had more fun times. I hung out with friends more. I went places more. I was more chill. I opted to maybe have a study session at a coffee shop rather than having it in my flat. I could have probably spent more time studying if I stayed in my flat because, coffee shop, you have to pack up your stuff, and then you have to go, and then you have to get a drink, and then you have to sit down and then open your computer. And so maybe, technically speaking, I could have gotten 20 more minutes if I stayed in the flat, but I enjoyed myself more, right, if I went to a coffee shop. And I think that's way more important. And so I think break 2 really helped me to be better generally and to feel better generally. And now, as tomorrow is the first day back at term, back at the conservatoire, and I'm ready for it. Honestly, I'm actually really excited to get into things, to study, to work hard, because I feel rested. You know, it's much better. So kind of thoughts from these two things. I've just given you two scenarios, and there's definitely one that's better than the other. But some thoughts that I have is, the first thing, having a plan is good, but the plans change, right? The first break that I did, I had a plan, and I really had a plan, and I did not allow myself to change the plan at all, right? And when I didn't change the plan and I got behind on the plan, I got stressed and scared and sad and all the bad words about all the negative stuff. But now, you know, in this second break, I had a plan, right? I was like, okay, I want to get this, this, and this done, but I knew that it was going to change, and, you know, other things came up, opportunities came up, and I still, you know, made time for the things that I needed to make time for, but I wasn't as stressed generally because I hadn't created this plan that could not change. So plans change. Breaks are for resting. This is the second thought. Breaks are for resting. As musicians, we still tend to practice, but finding time for us is crucial. I think, you know, I practiced throughout this break, and the other break I also practiced. There are times when I don't practice, you know. During last winter, I took a week off of oboe. So, you know, taking practice breaks is also crucial as well. But even when we are practicing, finding time for us that we need is crucial for our well-being as musicians, and also our practice as well, our growth. Resting is productive. And the last thing is, with the second break, I sat with myself more. I think the first break, I wasn't doing very well mentally, honestly. And so I busied my schedule so much that I didn't have to sit with myself and face the fact that I was struggling mentally. And because of that, you know, I struggled more. But this break, I sat with myself more. I have now a habit of, I had this habit and I got out of the habit, and now I'm back into it, of doing 5 minutes of meditation in the morning just to check in with myself and being like, okay, how are we feeling today? And being able to do that and to sit with myself has really helped me to know what I need from the day, you know, and be like, okay, is today the day where we can tackle the bigger task, or is today the day that we look at some of the smaller tasks, and maybe the bigger task can happen tomorrow? So things like that, that's really helpful as well. Okay. Yeah, so these are some thoughts from the two different types of breaks. Before we do a little recap of this, I want to tell you about something exciting. So basically, you know, in both of these breaks, I practiced, right? And I think especially with breaks, or breaks from an academic year, breaks from a schedule, we often feel like for me at least, I often feel like I need a schedule. I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do with all the time? I don't know. And especially with practice, you know, we can look at a break and be like, great, more time to practice. But then oftentimes for me, I find I go into a practice room and I just, you know, I'm not very productive. I put the hours in, but do I actually put the time and the effort? I put the time in. Do I put the effort and the focus in? Is it good practice? And so something that has really helped me with my practice is planning my practice. And a tool that has helped me plan my practice is a notable practice journal. This notable practice journal has really just transform my practice. Honestly, it makes it so that I can plan my practice and then I can reflect. It has reflection questions and a reflection section so that I can look back on my practice and honestly be honest with myself and be like, okay, you know, was that too much? Was that just good? Was that effective? Should I change this, that, and the other? And honestly, I feel like that aligns more with the second break than the first. As soon as I knew that this journal was working, I knew that I had to tell you about it, and I knew that I had to give you a code. So use code Eleanor15 for 15% off your journal. That is ELEANOR15 for 15% off your journal. And get yourself a journal and get practicing more focused and more effective and intentional. You know that I don't recommend anything that I don't absolutely love. This code is an affiliate code, which means I do receive a commission with no extra cost to you. Okay, let's do a bit of a recap. So the first thing, well, the first break, we could tell it wasn't very good. I was doing way too much. I had a plan and I just stuck, I made myself stick to it, and I didn't change it, and it was very relentless, and I ended up getting behind it, which made me stressed, and I didn't give myself time to rest and or just check in with myself, honestly. And it just, on paper I did so much, but actually I felt really not good, and I ended up failing my oboe technical exam because I couldn't at the end, by the time I got to the exam, I had worked so hard that I just had nothing left to give. Break 2 was much better. I still had a plan, an idea, but it was more of an idea, and it wasn't as strict, or it wasn't as strict, and I could change it and I could work through it, and that kind of took the stress away of having a plan, because sometimes plans that are too rigid give me stress. I spent more time with friends, not just friends like chilling, hanging out, having fun, but also I spent time with friends talking about social media and podcasting and doing things like that. And stuff like that can be really helpful as well, because it's social, but we're also idea bouncing off one another. And so that break was so much better. I feel much more rested and much more excited to get back into academics. So the basically thoughts from that: having a plan is good. Plans change though, and we need to change with our plans. Breaks are for resting. As musicians, we do tend to practice, but finding time for us to just be people is very crucial. And the last thing is the second break, I sat with myself more, so I was able to know more what I needed. And I feel like just checking in with myself every single day to be like, okay, how do we feel today, is really helpful. And I definitely didn't do that in the first break. All right, that is about it for this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope that you found something from this. If you did enjoy this, please do give it a like, a comment, a subscribe, a follow, depending on what platform you're watching or listening it to. It's different. So please do show the love. And all the links to do with this episode, including the blog post to do with it, and the link to get your Notable Practice Journal, will be in the description in the show notes. And I will see you next time. All right, take care. Bye-bye.